We've been talking. You mentioned, yeah, that's right. You got a new coach. We've been talking for 25 minutes. We haven't even mentioned that.
Yeah.
So here's the easy take on Bryan Harsin is that it's a reliable hire. It should be at least that at the minimum. He didn't build Boise State into what it is. Other guys did that, like Dan Hawkins and Dirk Cutter, and of course Chris Peterson most recently. But he maintained the excellence. And sure, UCF's jumped up, and Houston and Cincinnati and Memphis. But man, Boise State, they have been the gold standard at the Group of Five level for 2 decades, winning 11, 12 games every year. And Bryan Harsin did the same, basically. They're going like, I forget the exact numbers, but winning 75, 80% of his games. Okay, so he comes in to the SEC. He's not real familiar with the territory. He gets the job. Other people were looking to Coastal Carolina and Louisiana, Billy Napier and Jamie Chadwell, places like that to bring in a coach. And obviously, there's always the small percentage of the fan base that has just illusions of grandeur, grabbing NFL coaches or Urban Meyer or whomever. But as it stands, Ike, we'll start with you in regards to when Bryan Harsin was hired, your thoughts about the hiring, where you stood on that, and what you've seen out of him since then that may have changed your thought process a little bit.
Yeah, I approach it with cautious optimism all the time. You know, the fan in me won't let me bash it too much until I've seen something. He definitely isn't he's been a good coach where he's been, but of course, you know, coaching at Boise State is not necessarily coaching in the SEC. So it doesn't mean that it translates. So until I learned more, I was just like, okay, before I react, let me see what the guy actually has out here, right? As you know, we've seen over time, I've loved everything that I've seen. He's saying all the right things and he's doing all of the right things, in my opinion. Either that or they're doing an excellent job of selling me hope. And I really don't like being sold hope, but you know, I'll take it for right now until you snatch it away from me. But they're doing a good job of putting out all the right speeches. Like everything that they're saying in press conferences are things that I want to hear my coach say. The things that they're doing on social media and, you know, him getting up early in the morning, working out with the team, him actually leading team drills at the practice are things that I would like to see my coach do. And him talking about the way that he doesn't just want to develop football players. He wants to develop men that are going to go on and lead successful lives, in addition to him wanting to be able to develop coaches that are going to be able to coach really well. Those are all the things that you want to hear about the guy that's going to build your program. So nothing that he's done or said has made me tip back in the other direction. If anything, I've become more optimistic about the prospects of who we have as our head coach going into the future.
My initial reaction was who? Right. Like, I mean, to your point, Mark, he wasn't really at the top of anybody's list. It seemed like a hire kind of out of nowhere. So after the hire is made, you start to look at his track record and particularly his track record with developing players. And I started to get a little bit more encouraged the more that I heard from him. He said all the right things in his introductory press conference. I was very, very intrigued to hear him talk about strength and conditioning and nutrition as pillars and a foundation for a solid program. It's something that really gets overlooked. Coach Kevin Yoxel was our strength and conditioning coach, for 13 years. So he was the strength and conditioning coach for 2 undefeated teams at Auburn in 2004 and 2010, with Cam Newton. And, I think that was something that left a lot to be desired, that Harsin is going to bring back to the program. He's going to bring back, what I hear from him is he's going to bring back a certain kind of toughness that we've been missing mentally. I think a mark of a good leader is that he surrounds himself with other good leaders. And he comes out of the gate and he makes what I think is the most underrated coordinator hire of the offseason in Derek Mason. You bring in a proven SEC guy who, did really good things with Vanderbilt's defense, as head coach there, right? Before he left the SEC. And now he's back. He knows this league. He can recruit the South. I think that Harsin has surrounded himself with a great staff, right? Wide receiver coach Cornelius Williams, he's betting on this young guy to be able to come in and work some things that we've been underwhelming there. So he seems to have a plan and a blueprint, for success. And, I get asked a lot, Mark, like, what is a successful season for Auburn, in Bryan Harsin's first year? I think 8 wins is a really good season. I really do. I know a lot of fans don't want to hear that. We have something that we say at the War Report: no sunshine pumping. So if you're looking for a reason that Auburn's going to go undefeated and win the national championship, you won't hear it here. But I think that he does have the opportunity to surprise a lot of people with the talent that he has, because Auburn has generally done well when nobody expects anything of Auburn. Right. I mean, we had 2 undefeated seasons when we came in not very highly rated to entering the season. So, the one thing that I think is great for Harsin is similar to 2013 when Gus came in. Right. He is not taking over a talentless team. This is not a rebuild. He just needs to, fix the mentality of the team first. He's going to do some things differently. So that starts in the weight room. Owen Pappo was quoted as saying that they're going to look like Marines come fall. They've really energized this team with the strength and conditioning program. I think that Bryan Harsin was the right choice. Alan Green, really bucked the system on this one, right? We have an AD who went out and said, I'm going to go out and get my guy. Not who boosters want, not who fans want, but the right guy. And, I think that the players seem to have bought in, which is one of the most important things. And we'll see what the result of that is come fall. But I really like the energy that he's putting out right now and the excitement that he's creating around the program.
And to your point, Michael, the comment that you made in response to me citing the lower rated offensive lineman brought in the 2021 class was, let's develop. Let's do what they do at Wisconsin. They don't bring in 5-star offensive linemen very often, and they make them NFL players. Bryan Harsin is in this long line of Boise State coaches that I think people out there would be surprised how many Boise State players are in the NFL.
Yes, right.
And Boise State is never even in the top 70 in college football in the recruiting rankings. Yeah. Like they don't bring in any 4 stars. Most of their guys on the field are 2 stars, and they're competing with Power 5 teams. So they obviously know how to develop there. It's a different deal. It's the SEC, but it's still football, and it's still high-level football. So that'll be interesting to see what goes on there. I'm going to hit you guys with a kind of a program question. I don't even know exactly where I'm headed with this, because there are a few programs around college football that fascinate me. UCLA for certain reasons, because I figure, why can't you win? You're in a beautiful place. People want to go there. Why can't you win? There are certain – Auburn's one of them too, because I think you've got a very unique history in college football. So people ask me all the time, where's Auburn? Where would you rank them? What tier are they on? And I always say they're a top 15 program. It's a top 15 program in the country. I don't care what their record was last year. But if you look at, let's just take the last 20 years. I made the comment to somebody the other day that I said between Bear Bryant and Nick Saban, Auburn was better than Alabama. That's not by a ton, but they were better. They won the series. They finished in the top 10 more. They were just better. Through Bo, through Pat Dye, into the early 2000s, obviously Tuberville won 6 straight against the Tide. They were just better for a long time, for 30 years. So I don't completely buy into this narrative that some people have that since Nick Saban's at Tuscaloosa, you just kind of give up. You throw your hands up and you say, we can't, let's take our 8-4 and that's it. Now, obviously, Michael, you're speaking to this particular season. You got to be reasonable, right? Of course, but you got a very interesting history and program, because you mentioned 2004. If I'm Auburn, I put a banner up in the stadium, because how in the world do you win an SEC championship, go undefeated, and the only reason you finish number 3 is because you hit the ceiling? Oklahoma and USC were at the top of the poll to start the season. So the way things worked back then is you climbed as far as you could, and then and because Auburn started like 19th that year, they couldn't climb high enough. Oh, that's stupid. And then in 2010, Cam takes him to a championship. You mentioned that 2013, that deal was unlike anything in the history of college football, going from 0-8 in the SEC to within 7 seconds of a national championship. That's unheard of. There's not a example like that in college football. And then over the past 7 or 8 years, except for that November run in beating Georgia and Alabama when they were both number 1 to get yourself within a 60 minutes of a college football playoff appearance, it's been 4 to 5 losses every year. So this program is just, it's intriguing to me in terms of what should be expected. When the highs come, they peak out high 2004, 10, 12, or 13. And the rest of the time, it seems like this disappointment of, we got this top 10 team on paper, but we just went 8-4. Right. We didn't quite get it done. So, again, many people consider this the toughest job in college football because of who's in the division and who's in the state. So, Michael, what do you think about all that? I don't even know what that question is. I just rambled on about what I think about Auburn.
I got what you're putting down, Mark. Let me sum it up for you simply. Top 10 recruiting classes on average should produce top 10 finishes at the end of the season. Period. Full stop. Right? That's not what we've been doing. We've been recruiting like a top 10 team, or like a top 15 program, but we regularly finish outside that number at the end of the season. And that's about development and coaching. Now, they caught lightning in a bottle when they hired that guy up the road at that other school, but to your point, we had made a really nasty habit out of beating them until he got there. And then he started what he termed the process. And that's what we hope Harsin is bringing. Listen, you don't have to, nobody's getting fired for not beating Nick Saban, because then everybody would be fired. And as a matter of fact, over the last 8 years, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Gus did it more than anybody. So it's not about just beating them. It's about showing a sustained pattern of development, with the guys that you have. And we haven't had trouble getting the talent, but what you do with them after what you get them is the mark of a good program or a great program. Right. And Auburn has the talent to be a great program. Now we need the leaders of men to come in and take that talent and turn us into the top 15, top 10 program that we've been recruiting like over the last 10 years. That sums it up for me. I mean, it's frustrating as fans, to know what they're capable of, right? And then see it fall by the wayside, through totally controllable things. Nobody expects an undefeated season every year, right. And the fans of that other school, they think our year is all about beating them, Mark. It's not, right? It's really just about going out and being competitive every Saturday and feeling like the hundreds of hours that get put in between, January and August amount to a great product for what ultimately is about 42 hours of football in the fall. So I think that, Auburn is definitely, we're fun to watch when we're in it, and we're frustrating to watch when we're not. And mainly because
we're frustrating either way. That's just clear about
right.
That.
Yeah. I mean, even in the wins, we don't win easy. Right. In that you think about those undefeated seasons, in 2010, and then it wasn't undefeated, but in 2013, I mean, we had a national championship team that gave up more points defensively than any other national champion in the history of college football. I needed heart attack medicine to watch that season, and they just barely pull it out at the end. Right. We had college football's best player, but he was surrounded with a lot of what I'll just say was average talent, guys who were good. But, how many of those guys went on beside Nick Fairley to play at the next level? So, that's about development and coaching. That's something that they have to get back if they want to be a true top 15 program in college football.
Yeah. Now, you said it all. The frustration of the Auburn fan is seeing a team that you feel it can be better than what they're showing on Saturday, and not knowing really where to find your bearings about what's the problem here? Like, why are we not doing better? You have a national championship coach who comes in. You have a coach that takes us to a national title, I should say. And then the very next season, it falls apart. And then, you have the offensive coordinator who comes in and he's the coach, and you go back to a national championship. And then you're floating in the wind again until 2017, where it seems like you're rekindling the flame of, winning ways. And then it goes back downhill. It's just this roller coaster ride. And it's frustrating for me, particularly as a fan. And I know a lot of other fans, when you couple the success that you have in the offseason with recruiting, with the amount of money that you're paying a coach. You're paying him like a top 5, top 10 coach consistently, but then the product on the field doesn't marry either of those things. You're recruiting well, you're paying the staff well, so you can't say you're not paying for, a quality coach. You can't say you're not getting quality recruits in, but then at the end of the season, you look at the bowl record over the last couple of years, it's abysmal. Like, we're losing to everybody. And that's just not acceptable for a team with that much talent that's paying that much for their coach. Yeah, again, the word for me is consistency. I want to see some more consistency in the program, and hopefully Bryan Harsin brings that back to us.
You needed some of those points you put on poor Purdue against. You needed those spread out against everybody
spread out
else.
over a couple of bowl games would be great. We scored 63?
Yeah, for sure.
Unnecessarily. We didn't even need that much.
We didn't even need it. Yeah.
56 in the first half.
Yeah.
All right. Penn State's at number 10 on this FPI produced by ESPN. So that's not going to be an easy trip to Happy Valley, but you're at number 16. Do you have any thoughts about that, Michael? Does that sway you either way? Because as we discussed before we started to record, number 16 in the country also translates with that schedule to only about 7-5 if ESPN knows what they're talking about.
Right. Listen, the SEC West might as well be an extension of any division in the NFL, right? Like, I mean, it's going to be tough this year. A lot of people were down on LSU. I don't think they're going to be as bad as they played last year. You have Texas A&M, which is kind of on the rise. They have some things to replace on offense there. Alabama is Alabama. Ole Miss looks resurgent on offense under Lane Kiffin. Who knows what Mike Leach is going to put out at Mississippi State. I mean, you've got a lot of competition that's going to happen in our league next year. And a lot of it just hinges on what I think is going to be how productive are we going to be on offense. And our defense, Ike referenced 2019. We played well enough. We had a championship level defense in 2019, but they got no help from the offense that year, particularly on the road. So the 16 FPI, I think, reflects the respect that they have for the talent that we have. And I mean, it may even be a little high to me, but I just really think, at the end of the day, they're looking at Auburn and saying this team is supremely talented. We got the transfer on defense from West Virginia, Drayshawn Miller. He's going to come in and help anchor what is already a dynamic secondary. Defensively, I expect us to be good. I think that Derek Mason's going to know how to get the most out of this defense, and they're going to give us a chance to win most games. So the question will be, can we just produce enough offense to win those games? Because you're not going to stop everybody. Offense is, the rules of football have become so offense friendly over the last few years. Like, you can't touch the quarterback. It's harder to play defense as a defensive back. And you're seeing, a lot of teams score points like crazy. 2019 LSU, last year's Bama team, right? Like, these are all-time great offenses that we're seeing in the SEC now. So, you're not going to stop a team like that. You can only kind of limit them, and then you have to match their production on offense. And, 16 FPI reflects the question mark about whether we can produce enough offense, to stay up there with the big boys. That's what I see about that ranking. I think it's a respect of what Auburn can be as a program, while acknowledging the reality of the situation that we face with our schedule, which really is every year.
Yeah, no, we're in this predicament every single year. We're going to have one of the toughest schedules in college football. It's not going to get any easier with our out of conference schedule the last couple of years. I mean, you look at Washington, Oregon, and we were scheduled to start last season against North Carolina, who ended up having a really good year. Due to COVID, we played an all SEC schedule. But North Carolina was supposed to be our opener last season. Then we're going to come in with our first big test on the road against Penn State in one of the most hostile environments in college football. Like, it's not easy to play. And to your point, Bryan Harsin took a really tough job, right? Like, if you're going to play at Auburn, you're going to have a very tough job. And if he can win at the same rate that he was winning at Boise here in Auburn, he might go down as one of the best ever, right? Like, it's just not an easy thing to come in and do. But as far as the rankings are concerned, Penn State being at 10, That's a very optimistic ranking in my book, just because Penn State didn't have a great season last year, but that shows a respect for who they have going up there, that they have as far as running that program, that they feel like they can right the ship. Got a new offensive coordinator there at Penn State, so they're expecting to be able to put up more offense and cure some of the woes that they have going on there. But then it shows a ton of respect for us finishing the season in the fashion that we did last year, being fairly mediocre, but still considered to be one of the top 25 teams in the country. That's a good thing. And I think as an Auburn fan who has seen the trajectory of a school that has been counted out and then come from behind, I prefer for us to be even lower. Like, just drop us down to like 28 or something, so that they can play the underdog role and be what traditionally has been the Auburn role of upset guy, and make people respect you later on. So I'm good with it.
Yeah, it's fun to talk about, and it keeps YouTube channels like mine going. But once they hit the field, it doesn't matter if you're 4 or 44 or 102. Right. They got to start popping pads and start running and hitting on the field. But Mississippi State at 8 and Oklahoma State at 9 and Texas Tech at 21 makes it look like I've got a video that I'm going to post here on the ESPN FPI. All right, we got Michael Gittens on the line, and also Ike Jones talking Auburn football. Catch him on the War Report. So let me get the banner up here one more time. These guys, because this was a tremendous conversation. Again, it's Michael, it's Ike at the War Report. Please check out their YouTube channel. They're talking Auburn football all the time. Guys, I appreciate the time, appreciate the insight, the knowledge, the information. It was all great stuff.
Yeah, appreciate you having us on.
Thanks for having us on, Mark. War Eagle.